49. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. We want you to know about all the different corners, all the different puzzle pieces it takes for you to build the scaffolding around your practice. I don't know how many metaphors I could use in one sentence, but that was quite a few. We want to help you find those things that maybe you didn't learn about. And today we're going to be digging into that around standing out, around marketing. Just want to let you know if you do have kids in the room, you might want to put on headphones because we may say some naughty words in this. As you probably saw, the E on today's episode and the title, we're going to be using the actual words instead of pretending that we're not adults here. So just want to make sure that you know that before we dive in, that some words that you can choose if your kids hear it or not. You know, in my family, our rule is that you can swear in the house because when I was a kid, everything was black and white. It was like it's good or it's bad. And in adulthood, that's not always the case. There's times when we do use words, and it's really funny because we do have some rules when we're playing Mario Kart that you can like talk smack about people, but usually you can't use swear words at people. But there was this morning when my daughter, who I think she was probably 8 at the time, and here comes the first word. So if your kids are in the room, pause it. She's getting her backpack together for school, and she said, "Where's all my shit?" And I'm just like, honey, you seem like kind of flustered. She's like, "Oh no, I'm not." I'm like, do you think that shit just means stuff? And she had thought that it just meant stuff. She didn't understand that it amplified it a little bit. But to me, that nuance of parenting is really exciting. Totally has nothing to do with our episode today, other than that, just giving you a little warning about that we're going to be saying some words that maybe your kids you don't want them to hear. Today, I have Louis Grenier with me, who is a recovering Frenchman who helps marketers stand the fuck out. For over a decade, this contrarian has built a reputation for calling bullshit on unconventional marketing and delivering sharp, unfiltered insights as the antidote. Welcome, Louis, to the Practice the Practice podcast.
Bonjour, bonjour. It's an honor to talk to someone who's been running a podcast for so long. I started my own, now it's stopped, but I started my own 8 years ago and I felt like an absolute innovator and precursor. My dad didn't know what a podcast was, no one kind of talked about it. Nowadays, everyone knows, listen to some, but yeah, to have your stamina and to be able to keep at it for that long is commendable. I hope people don't take that for granted because it's a huge feat.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you know, it's one of those things that when we started planning it in 2012, I say we, when I started planning it in 2012 and then launched January of 2013, it really was just like, okay, let's just see, because there was no one podcasting about the business of private practice back then. And so thought, well, first to the market's not a bad thing. And there's definitely been times when I thought about giving it up, but it's working for us.
Well done, mate. Like it's a huge bet because yeah, it sounds obvious for now, but like to take that bet 13 years ago, good. I
Yeah.
like it.
And I think that that idea of just like, you know, when it was, as it has been working, to then double down on it, triple down, where, you know, last year we did 5 episodes a week, and year before that we had, you know, 5 to 7. And that's because we had great guests, we had great sponsors, we were seeing the ROI on it. So thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to be talking
Very
about
welcome.
Stand the Fuck Out, your book, which I'm super excited about talking about. But I want to just start with the problem of, why do people not stand out? What do people tend to do? What narratives do they buy into that often make them not stand out?
Well, we are a social species that care so much about what others think of us, right? It's an evolutionary thing, which you need to kind of connect with the herd and behave as the herd. So standing out a couple of centuries ago was a bad idea. You don't want to stand out from your community, your tribe, or anything because you could be into major trouble. Uh, I think that's why deep down we kind of go back to the average, go back to the mean. We don't like to stand out in our personal life too much. We don't want to be pointed at. It's just a such a deep instinct that we have. But nowadays, when you run a business, especially a private practice, when you're like doing your own thing or you have a couple of team members, um, the risk is to not stand out. So that's the only risky choice is to actually choose to do everything that what the others are doing. Um, It's not to say that you should do everything differently. There's nuances there, to your point earlier about nuances. By the way, my daughter is allowed to curse inside the house, and that's it. That's we might evolve as she's using them more, but for now, that's it. I love to curse, so I don't mind her cursing as long as she knows the things. But yeah, to go back to that, yeah, they struggle to stand out because it goes against our instinct. But nowadays, especially in crowded space, let's say New York City, right? You have a practice there. You have like 1,000 in a 1 mile radius. You must find one way, shape, or form to stand out.
So I have a consulting client in New York. I'm glad you bring that up. He's done Google ads, he's done SEO, he's working, he's doing so much TikTok, and getting thousands of views on his TikToks, and it's not converting into actual clients coming in. So let's take him as a case example. How would you
Sure.
recommend that someone like that stand out, or maybe even what questions would you ask them or have them think about in order to really stand out?
So a lot of folks listening who haven't been trained in marketing might think that marketing equals communications or advertising, right? Which is far from the case. So, communication is a tiny part of marketing, but there are deeper, more foundational questions that you must ask yourself on your business. And the advertising, the offer that you put in your TikTok ads or whatever is kind of the last question you ask yourself, not the first. So that's my bone to pick against a lot of folks talking about marketing over social media and stuff who confuse on purpose the offer, the direct response part of it with the full marketing discipline. Um, it's too easy to talk about that because if you don't have foundations, the best offer won't do anything. So to talk about this example, you said you have a client there. What do they do? Like just to have an idea.
Yeah, so they help mostly people that are, they're bisexual. They maybe are in a number of different relationships. They're dealing with anxiety. Oftentimes they're kind of artist types, but also he's getting some kind of bigger kind of business people as well. Kind of like you picture like the anxious artist kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. So there is 4 steps that I highlight in my book, my methodology, like the work I do with clients myself. I use that for my own sanity too. And I'm just going to go through them. So you have insight foraging, unique positioning, distinctive brand, and continuous reach. And those are not my concept. It's literally just standing on shoulders of giants, of folks who have done the work, who have studied the science behind like behavior and how people act and stuff like that. But it's me digesting it and creating in a shape that fits my brain. So insight foraging is all about understanding the truth about the customer. It's good old market research. It's good old understanding why those patients came to your clients, what problems did they face before, what triggered led them to say, "Fuck it, I need to do something about it." What alternatives have they looked into prior to looking for your client? Those kind of core questions. I'll go deeper in a couple of minutes. The stage 2, which is where I think there's big opportunity there in that example, but also for anyone listening, is unique positioning. Is the ability to say we are the only one that solved that problem for that group of people that alternatives don't do well or not at all. It's the ability to really solve a ignored struggle, a problem that hasn't been solved properly or at all by alternatives. That's positioning. And semantics are very important, especially in marketing, because gurus and folks who don't know enough about it will confuse you. And so I try to be very specific about the words I use. So that's positioning, right? That's the act of positioning. The stage 3 is distinctive brand. Differentiation and distinctiveness are 2 different topics, right? Differentiation is essentially your unique positioning, your ability to say we're different because we solved that problem differently or uniquely compared to others. Distinctiveness is the ability to be noticed, to stick out using some element of your brand and branding that don't necessarily have to connect with anything you do for a living with your practice. So it could be a mascot, it could be a slogan, it could be a sound, it could be a story. It doesn't have to make a lot of sense. It's not a rational kind of choice. It's more of a irrational, fun, emotional choice. That's the stage 3. And stage 4 is continuous reach, which is the ability to reach out to those ideal customers time and time again with messages that fit their life. But that's usually the part where people start, right? They start with the communication, the channels, and they don't go through the stage before that. Why? Because it's not sexy. They don't want to see, they don't want to invest the time in it. But you can go through those stages pretty fast once you know what question to ask. So I'll briefly describe the 6 questions that you must be able to answer in order to get clarity there. Let me just find them because I don't want to forget any. Not that I don't know my book, but
No, I hear you. Like when you've talked about a book, it's like, oh man, I wrote this like, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and someone asks you a very particular question. So
it's a
yeah,
bit sad.
I also will have my book with me during interviews just to make sure I say
Yeah.
what's actually in it.
So there's 6 things that you must know about your market. It's what did they try to accomplish by going to you? I call that the job, the goal, whatever you want to call it. 2 is what other solutions have they used or considered in the process. So in the context of a practice, it doesn't mean necessarily going to someone else's practice. It could be to try to suck it up and just read a book about it. It could be talking about it to a friend. It could be doing all of the above, right? So alternatives are not just direct competitors. They are not purely everyone else in the other radius that do exactly the same thing as you. It's whatever they would do if you didn't exist. Struggles are the problems that they were trying to solve when they come to you. So you mentioned about like those anxious artists, this struggle with sexuality and stuff like that. That's where it comes in. Segment is like, how would you describe that group of people who feel those pains more intensely than the average? Category, what other things belong to the group of things you offer? So what are you exactly? What is the words that you'd be using to describe your practice in a way that is understood by potential clients, in a way that is in demand as well? So it's easy to come up with a new category and invent new terms, but if no one search for that and understand that, it means no demand, therefore no business. And finally, perhaps the most interesting thing when I work with clients, whether your practice, you run your practice or you like run a big business, this one almost always lead to the best insight is what are the specific events that led those clients to act, to get started into the process. And I'll give a quick example. You can be in pain, you can have a back pain for 10 years without doing anything about it. Right? That's the pain point. But it's only when your grandkids come to visit you this weekend that you decide to go to the physio in order to solve it. So thinking that identifying the right problem and communicating about that in TikTok and whatever is enough is wrong. You need both problems, of course, but you also need a trigger event in order to have the chemical reaction to start. So I'll stop here because I could talk for hours, as you noticed.
Well, I love that idea of like what was that moment when it flipped. Oftentimes as an activity, we'll say like imagine that your ideal client had their journal and they were writing, and in the middle of writing in their journal, they said, "Oh my gosh, I have to start counseling."
Yep.
And what's in their journal? What's that last entry before they pick up the phone or they schedule an online booking with you? So I love that
Yep.
idea of really that triggering event, that break point for people. I'm starting
Yes.
a new practice that's called Great Lakes Online Counseling. And the whole focus of it is people that are divorced, people that are having a rough time with co-parenting, they're dating after betrayal, that sort of thing. And even just thinking about like what would that be for some of these people? They're probably not going to be in the midst of a divorce because there's just so much going on. It's probably going to be when the dust is settled a little bit and they say, "Hey, I want to start dating again, but I'm feeling all these triggers." Or maybe it's their
Yeah,
first
but why
breakup with someone
do they want
after
to start
they start
dating
dating
again?
again.
That's the question I would ask is then, okay, but let's unravel it. Like what is the timeline? So my advice then to that situation and as well for your client in New York would be what you want to do is get insight from folks who have crossed the bridge. They have done the thing. So they've hired you already, they've paid you already, and so you have proof that they've taken the action that you want other people to take. And you want to look back at that timeline. You like a journalist, just looking back at all the decisions that they took before. So that could be through just a normal conversation. A lot of folks in the works that that you serve, like in the practice and stuff, are very emotionally intelligent, and so they would tend to ask questions like that anyway. But like, what brought you to me, and specifically what event compelled you to act? A lot of people would have that answer already. But if you don't, then talk to people, look back at your email conversation with successful clients, stuff like that, right? You will find answers to those 6 questions by just digging. And it's worth taking a couple of days to do it, because that's the structure, that's the foundation of every single other decisions you're going to make about your marketing. Once you have answers to those 6 questions and they are specific, really specific, then everything flows much easier. So obviously, maybe a better example than your client in New York is what you just described with your practice that you want to launch, because then I can ask you a question. But like, what would be the you mentioned the struggle a bit, but what would be let's see, what do I want to know? Yeah, what are they trying to accomplish? Like, what's the main goal?
Yeah, I would say that the main goal of people as we launch Great Lakes Online Counseling is probably to feel like they can love again, that they can
Okay.
have relationships again, that life can be easier than it was in that previous marriage or that it is with that current co-parenting.
Okay. So there's a categories of struggle that I share in the book as well, to kind of brainstorm and think about it. So there's self-love, which is the
Mm.
first one, avoiding feeling like a loser. That's my definition. You have love and company, avoiding loneliness. You have fitting in, purpose, control, so controlling or organizing chaos, making fewer decisions, avoid overwhelming choices, entertainment, reducing risk, and power trip, like feeling like keeping up with the Joneses or feeling superior to others. And what tends to happen is the people that, like your future clients, would have those kind of floating around that would come and go in terms of waves, and they would be a bit more specific, right? So the self-love could be, more relevant to the specific situation they are in, like loving myself again after a breakup, stuff like that. So that's pretty clear to me. Then I would move on to the category, like, is this a type of practice that exists already, or are you the first that offer that type of thing to that group of people?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure there are practices that are like this out there, but also, how do we then stand out at the practice? Because I think there's a balance there of kind of what someone's looking for is kind of care and community or like insight from a therapist.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the like standing outside is like doing things that are disruptive or brash or kind
Yes.
of. So, how do you think therapists can find that balance?
So you don't have to be a French intellectual terrorist to stand out. So my point is my advice is really not to become like me and be like, use the word fuck in the title of or whatever you do or the name of your practice. It's about really, if you're able to double down on your positioning, if you're able to find a unique one, you already stand out in some way. Why? Because you're the only one that offers this type of services for that group of people who are in pain, and therefore they will be more likely to pick you over the rest because you've become the least risky option. You're able to talk to them, to solve a problem that you understand so well. There is literally no other option but you, right? Other than the generic practice, generic like psychologists and whatnot. So that's the beauty of like a unique positioning. Once you're able to really double down on that, this is why niching down and all of those concepts come from. It's really the ability to remove as much risk as possible for your ideal segment, where they're like, I basically have no option but to go with you because it's just the perfect fit, right? So that's one way to stand out. That's usually easier when you're in a not necessarily a super crowded market where there's so many doing the same thing. You could niche down and find a problem that has been ignored that people care about. That's usually the way to do it, but sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you can't do that in good faith because, yes, there's a few that do exactly the same thing, and that's fine. That's okay because you have other opportunities to stand out. So a unique positioning might not be available, but you need a sharp positioning anyway. And once you're in a category that is in demand, once you place yourself in a lane where there's demand flowing, when you know people are searching for this type of um, issues to solve, which is pretty clear for what you described, like this is just people get divorced every day. Like that's just, you know, there is a demand there, there's demand flowing that won't stop. So that means you're positioned well, but maybe not uniquely, and that's okay because you can move on to the next step, which is the distinctive brand. And
Mm.
that's when you can have more fun.
Mm. How do we have more fun in that?
So, what's important here is to make, to not go too left field and to not try to use conventions and use visuals or logos or taglines or whatever else that don't fit with the world of a practice, right? So what I mean by this is you don't want to have a name that stands out plus a branding that doesn't look like a practice branding plus a venue or like a place where you take clients that doesn't look like it. So you don't want to go too far in every single ways in your branding. You want to pick one or two dimensions where you go completely left field. And that's kind of what I call a distinctive asset. So a distinctive asset is a brand asset that could be visual, audio, anything that tickles the brain that is meaning free. And what I mean by this is that it doesn't connect with anything at a deeper level. I don't know what is the convention for practice, but I'm pretty sure there's this like logo of, I don't know, two people hugging each other and very, very tame colors and all of that, right? So once you understand the conventions of the category of what people expect, you need to find one or two dimensions to actually completely go left field with. So if all of the other practice use blue and a hugging logo, maybe it's an opportunity to do something drastically different and picking something that means something to you, but that doesn't have to be related to the concept of therapy, for example. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it reminds me of a client that I had. His name's Andy, and he started a counseling practice called Blue Boat Counseling. And so, he just took an object that was different from the counseling world, and he has a story behind it. When he was a kid, you'd go to those like a fair or a carnival, and there's those little rides the kids go around in circles on a car or a boat, and he loved the color blue so much that he would wait for the blue boat, even if he had to wait in line longer. And so to him, that represents finding your true self, going back to your original kind of like naivety, while also saying, like, I'm going to make strong choices and boundaries for myself. So to me, it has like a great story. It still uses soft colors that are kind of therapeutic, but that, when you say blue boat counseling right away, it's like, well, why blue boat? Are you guys doing sailing counseling? And so he's in the middle of, I think, Ohio. So that's
Yeah,
the kind of thing that
no
stands out to
chance.
me that just stands out so well.
That's a honestly a perfect example. That's pretty much spot on the concept, which is like it doesn't mean anything to anyone else. It stand out while you're boat, but there is a deeper story there to the founder. That's perfect. So it's like something that you are the only one that can use that, which makes sense, right? The cover of my book is a rooster with a purple beret. You might say that it's connected to something. Yes, it's connecting to my nationality and whatnot. But in my space, the marketing industry in general, there's no one else using a rooster, no one else, definitely not using a rooster with a purple beret. And so I know that stand out. And if I was using a convention, I wouldn't have a mascot in the first place. So
Mm.
you need to kind of really dig deep into there's a few questions that you can ask yourself actually, a few exercises. So that example, by the way, the blue bot counseling is fucking perfect. Like that's just spot on. So it could be the founder story, for example. What made them start? Why are you doing this, right? Well, how does it? Why do you care about it so much? Are there any stories from your childhood that connects with that? Like exactly that. Another way you can kind of feed your brain is you would list down all the conventions, all the category conventions, the branding stuff that competitors, direct competitors do. So the colors, what is the color scheme that they tend to use, the logo they tend to use, the type of shape they tend to use, etc. And you ask yourself, what if I go completely the opposite on that direction? What would it look like? All right. So that's another one. Another question you can ask yourself, which is quite practical, is what is a little thing, a detail, something that people tend to notice about you and your life? So could be silly stuff. Could be like that you're taller than the average. Could be that you have two bulldogs. It could be anything. But it's definitely not the fact that you care. It's definitely not the fact that you're passionate, right? That's just boilerplate, like standard. No, I mean extremely specific, little detail. Again, the Bluebird counseling, perfect example. It's like a story. It's a little thing. It's a moment. It's doesn't mean anything. It's specific. So you can feed your brain with that kind of stuff, but then it goes back to your first question, which is how do you convince yourself, have the courage to try, right? And it's like, well, the only risky choice nowadays in a category, in a market that is very crowded, is to just blend in. So if you want to grow and try something new and be noticed, then you're gonna have to try it. And guess what? It's not gonna be as bad as you imagine. And you need those butterflies in your stomach, right? Like when I try something new for my marketing, for my business, if it's too safe, I know it because it feels like business as usual. When it's a bit risky and you feel like, ooh, it could not work, then I'm like, okay, that's good. That's good. I need to stay there. I need to stay in that place of, it might not work. So you need to seek the discomfort. And it goes against your intuition. It goes against your instinct, but it needs to be done. It needs to be done in one way, shape, or form. So pay attention to those details.
Yeah, I think one of those things that people worry about, like, I've thought about, well, do we need a mascot with practice of the practice? Should I put out like therapy dad jokes? Because I'm a dad, I'm a single dad, but it's like, I don't want to look unprofessional. I don't want to look stupid. And so all that all those blocks get in my way of not trying some things to see if they might work. How do you suggest even I like address those blocks of feeling like I need to be so professional and giving myself, time to play? Because it's like I do improv, I, do like fake freestyle poetry. I do these things in my personal life that is just fun and I'm goofy and make up raps with my daughters, but it's like I don't bring that into practice of the practice very often.
Yeah. So it's a balance. Like there's nuance to everything, and so some people are more comfortable with that, taking these type of steps in industries that might be more like welcoming to this kind of stuff. So it's what I advise is to start small and see. It's like you don't have to like go completely overboard straight away, but try to like challenge yourself in one dimension and maybe do that, cracking a couple of more jokes in one of the email and see how people react, and understanding that actually nothing happens, nothing bad happens whatsoever. So, and then you'll see that that's the new normal, right? So that's, oh, okay, nothing bad happened. So that's the new baseline. And then you challenge yourself again. So, like most times, in fact, I think 100% of the time, nearly, it doesn't happen like, you flip a switch and everything goes stand the fuck out, in every dimension. It's a process, it's a journey. So, but you do want to seek, like, when you talk about those things, like I could see the excitement, I could see
Yeah.
how genuinely excited you were. And that's a feeling worth chasing. It's like if you genuinely love it, people will connect with that. And, in my years of saying stuff and saying fuck and having a bit of fun here and there and talking about what I think on LinkedIn and whatever, I can count on one hand the number of times I got a backlash of any kind. Like, seriously. So, because I think that's the concept. I'm not mean and mean-spirited towards any individual in particular. So I don't name and shame. I don't do any of that. And I try to make it fun. Like I try to seek the fun part of it. So even the rooster or the world fuck, it's not like fuck the establishment. And, So nothing bad happens. It's just your brain trying to protect you from harm, potential harm. But
Hmm.
again, it's we're not in the jungle. So
We're not in the jungle. Such a good reminder. Our brains still think we are, but we're not.
no,
Louis, the last question I always ask is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
that you shouldn't trust marketing gurus or anyone talking about marketing and growth for your practice when they talk about tactics and this new thing that you should know about that you don't know about, these new secrets that you could unlock that others don't know about. All of that is BS. The foundational the foundations of marketing will not change because people are not changing. And so be very careful about who you trust when we talk about this type of topic. So always try to go back to first principles, the things that will not change about people in particular. That will keep you sane and safe.
Oh, so awesome. Well, the book is Stand the Fuck Out. Where can people get the book? How can they follow you more?
They just have to Google or search Stand the Fuck Out. They'll find me. They'll find the book on Amazon. If you buy it and then forward the receipt to me, you'll see it in the book. You can get a couple of more stuff, a digital bundle I call it, with extra stuff for free. Yeah, don't be a stranger. Don't be afraid to reach out. I am who I am. Like I don't portray, I don't act like someone else. I'm genuinely trying to help. So don't be a stranger, and that's it.
Louis, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for sending the books through. Can't wait for our audience to learn more from you.
Well, you're so welcome, and thank you.
You know, it's funny. I get a lot of guests on the show that send me books, and not that I don't want to read all of their books, but I love how Louis referenced his own book while we were talking for things that I genuinely want to work on. So I'm going to jump into his book. I'm going to, use it for Great Lakes Online Counseling. I'm going to recommend it to my consulting clients. It's definitely something that you should get if you want to amp up your marketing and really have some structure around it. It's similar to the book, The One Thing. There's so many great images within the book. I love when a book takes what they're saying, but then also gives you some visuals that go along with it. So, really excited to dig into that. And, we couldn't do the show without our amazing sponsors. If you want to take HR type of stuff off of your plate this year, if you want to have help with paying, hiring, onboarding, supporting your team from anywhere, Gusto is the place to go. It's who we use here at Practice of the Practice. It's also who I'm going to be using with Great Lakes Online Counseling. It's so easy to just transfer and transition all your existing data to get up and running. So you get 3 months for free when you try Gusto over at gusto.com/Joe. Again, that's 3 months for free over at gusto.com/Joe. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.